Hey guys, welcome back to more Reddit stories. Imagine watching a white Escalade tear through your private farmland twice a day, scaring your cattle and destroying your crops. All the while, the driver claims she owns your land. Sounds insane, right? Well, when this HOA board member refused to stop trespassing after months of warnings, I decided to teach her a lesson she would never forget. Let's start with a petty revenge story that is titled "Neighbor kept blocking my driveway, so I gave him a taste of his own medicine." So this has been driving me insane for like 3 months now. My neighbor parks his massive truck just enough over the edge of my driveway that I can technically still get out, but I have to do this ridiculous multi-point turn every single morning. I have asked him about it twice. First time he was like, "Oh, my bad," but then kept doing it still. Second time, he literally just goes, "There's still enough room though," and walked back inside. Like, dude, come on. Anyway, last Tuesday I see him outside doing yard work and his truck is in its usual spot. So I parked my car directly behind it in the street, not blocking his driveway or anything illegal, just making it so he would have to do some weird maneuvers to back out. And sure enough, 20 minutes later there's knocking on my door. He is all annoyed asking me to move my car. I just smiled real big and said, "I mean, there's still room, you just gotta do a few extra turns to get out." The look on his face, laughing my butt off. He has not parked anywhere near my driveway since. And yeah guys, if you ever had any funny, noteworthy conflicts with your neighbors about parking issues, then please let us know in the comments because I would love to hear your story. And while you're at it, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you enjoy my daily content. Either way, the next one is the title story, which is titled "HOA Karen kept driving through my farm, so I set up spike traps." So I own a small farm in a rural area, about 40 acres of decent land that has been in my family for 3 generations. We've got some livestock, grow hay, and rent out part of the land to a local farmer who plants corn. It's not a massive operation, but it is mine. It is paid off and I make enough to live comfortably without having to deal with office politics or a boss breathing down my neck. The property sits at the end of a dirt road, nice and private, exactly how I like it. About 8 years ago, a big housing development went up about half a mile from my property line. You know the deal, fancy houses with an HOA that has more rules than the federal government. I did not pay much attention when they were building because it wasn't my problem. My property was clearly marked, surveyed, and recorded with the county. I had fences, I had posted signs, and I had documentation going back decades. The development's main entrance was on the complete opposite side of my farm, so I figured we would never interact. Well, I was wrong. The trouble started about 6 months after the development was finished and people started moving in. And by the way guys, if you have a farm and an HOA suddenly pops up on the opposite side of your farm, never assume that there won't be any issues. That's what I've learned from these HOA stories so far. I first noticed tire tracks cutting through one of my fields. Not a huge deal initially, I mean sometimes people get lost, take a wrong turn, whatever, but then it kept happening. Same track, same route, cutting right through my property to connect to a county road on the other side. Someone was using my land as a shortcut. So I put up more signs. Big orange ones that said, "Private property, no trespassing, every 50 feet along that route." But they got ignored. So I put up wooden rail fences. And yes, someone knocked them down. I even tried putting up those plastic barrier posts and they got driven over. That is when I finally caught the culprit. I was out fixing a water trough one morning when I heard an engine. I looked up to see a white Escalade bouncing through my field, going way too fast for the terrain, kicking up dust and probably scaring my cattle. I flagged her down and that was my first meeting with Karen. She rolled down her window and looked at me like I was something she had scraped off her shoe. "Can I help you?" she asked in that tone that really means, "Why are you bothering me?" "Yeah, you're on my property," I said to keep it simple. "This is private land, you need to use the main roads." Well, she actually laughed. "This is not your property, this is HOA common area." I blinked. What? The HOA owns this land for community access. It is in our bylaws. Now, I'm not a genius, but I'm not an idiot either. Lady, I've owned this property for 15 years and my family has owned it for 60 years before that. This is my farm, and you are trespassing. She waved her hand dismissively. You're mistaken. I'm on the HOA board and I've seen the maps. This is our property. I pulled out my phone. I can show you the property survey right now if you want. I don't need to see anything. I know what I know. She started rolling up her window. Don't harass HOA board members or we will file a complaint. And she just drove off through my field, damaging my land. I stood there for a minute, trying to process what had just happened. Then I went home and pulled out all my property documents, survey maps, deed, tax records, just everything. My property lines were crystal clear and there was zero ambiguity. The HOA development was completely separate, on completely different parcels. There was no connection, no easement, no shared property, just nothing. I called the HOA management company the next day, got transferred around for a while, before I finally got someone who could pull up their maps. It took them about 5 minutes to confirm what I already knew. My property was not part of the HOA, had never been part of the HOA, and there was no legal right-of-way through my land. Would you like me to send a notice to the board? The person asked. Yes, please. Specifically to… I gave them Karen's name, which by the way I wished was Brittany Karen, which I'd gotten from the HOA website, where she was proudly listed as Director of Community Standards. I will send it out today, they promised, and the notice went out. Karen ignored it. She kept using my property as her personal shortcut, at least once a day, sometimes twice, always in that white Escalade, always speeding through my fields like she owned the place. So I sent her a certified letter. She refused delivery. I tried calling her, but she blocked my number. I even went to one of the HOA meetings to address it in person, and she had me removed by security for disrupting official HOA business. This went on for 3 months, 3 months of watching this entitled woman tear up my land, scatter my cattle, and ignore every attempt I made to resolve it peacefully. I documented everything. I took photos, videos, recorded dates and times. I kept copies of every letter, every mail, and every attempted communication. My lawyer told me that I had a great case for trespassing and I could probably get a restraining order. But the wheels of justice turned slowly, and in the meantime Karen was doing real damage to my property. The route she had been taking had started to develop serious ruts from her repeatedly driving over the same path. It was affecting drainage in that field, and I was worried about erosion. That is when I decided to take matters into my own hands. Legally, of course. I did my research. In my state, property owners have pretty broad rights when it comes to protecting their land from trespassers, especially after you have made good faith efforts to stop it through normal channels. And by the way, guys, let me know in the comments, how would you have protected your property? As far as I am aware, in some states in the US, you don't only have to protect your property legally, you can also, let's just say, protect it with other means. Let me know how you would have done it in the comments if you were facing this Karen in real life. Either way, you can put up barriers, you can install gates, and yes, you can even use certain types of vehicle deterrents as long as they are clearly marked and you have given adequate warning. I went to the local sheriff's office and had a long conversation with a friend of mine there. I showed him all my documentation, the photos of Karen's vehicle on my property, the refused certified letters, the HOA management company's confirmation that she had no right to be there, just everything. So what are you thinking of doing? He asked. Spike strips, I said. The kind that police use. You know, hollow spikes that flatten tires but don't cause blowouts. I want to put them across the route she's been using. He thought about it for a minute. You would need warning signs, multiple signs clearly visible, warning about vehicle deterrence ahead. I can do that. And you would need to give her one final written warning that you are installing them. Certified mail, sent to multiple addresses if you have them. Not a problem. And document everything. Every step, every sign, and every warning. If this goes to court, you want to show that you did everything possible to prevent someone from getting hurt. And by the way, guys, why are you actually responsible for people getting hurt on your private property, especially when it's clearly marked as private property? These people are trespassing. You should not be responsible for them getting hurt. Anyway, I followed his advice to the letter. I sent Karen 3 certified letters, 1 to her home address, 1 to the HOA management company for her attention, and 1 to her work address that I found through some basic online research. All 3 letters were identical and very clear. This is your final warning. You are trespassing on private property located at my address. You have been verbally warned, sent previous notices, and the HOA management company has confirmed that you have no legal right to access this land. Effective immediately, vehicle deterrent devices will be installed on this property to prevent unauthorized access. These devices will damage your vehicle if you continue to trespass, and you are legally required to use public roads. Any further trespassing will result in legal action. I had my lawyer review the letters before I sent them. She approved them and reminded me to save proof of emailing. Then I put up signs, not just a few. I went overboard. Every 20 feet along the route Karen had been using, I installed large yellow signs that read, "Warning, private property, vehicle deterrence in use, tire damage will occur, trespassers will be prosecuted." I made sure those signs were reflective, visible from both directions, and mounted high enough that they couldn't be missed even at night. And then I installed the spike strips. I got police-grade portable spike strips from another friend. I'm not sure where he got these from, but I'm glad he was able to give them to me. These were not some DIY nonsense. They were professional equipment designed to safely stop vehicles without causing dangerous blowouts. The hollow spikes would penetrate tires and cause controlled deflation. I positioned 3 sets of them across the route Karen had been using, each one behind its own set of warning signs. I also installed trail cameras, multiple angles, high resolution, and motion activated. If anything happened, I would have video proof from multiple perspectives, and then I waited. It took exactly 4 days. I was in my barn doing maintenance on my tractor when my phone started blowing up with motion alerts from the cameras. I pulled up the app and watched in real time as Karen's white Escalade came bouncing across my field, same as always, completely ignoring all the signs I had installed. The first spike strip got her front tires, and I watched her vehicle lurch as they started deflating. She kept driving though. The second strip got her rear tires, and now all 4 tires were compromised, but she was still moving, probably on momentum and stubbornness. The third spike strip was overkill at that point, but it made sure the job was done. Her Escalade rolled to a stop about 50 yards past the last spike strip, sitting on 4 completely flat tires in the middle of my field. I saved all the camera footage immediately, backing it up to 3 different locations. Then I called the sheriff's office and reported a trespasser on my property. By the time I walked out to where her vehicle was sitting, Karen was standing next to it, face red, screaming into her phone. She saw me approaching and turned that fury in my direction. "You psychopath! You destroyed my car! I'm calling the police!" "I already called them," I said calmly. "They are on their way. And by the way, you're trespassing." "This is HOA property. You have no right to put traps on HOA land." I pulled out my phone and started recording. Well, for the record, this is private property. You have been warned multiple times, both verbally and in writing. You've been sent certified letters, one of which you received 4 days ago. And you drove past approximately 15 warning signs telling you about the vehicle deterrence. You made the choice to trespass anyway. She tried to grab my phone and I stepped back. "Don't touch me, that's assault." "I'm gonna sue you for everything you have. My lawyer's gonna destroy you. Do you even know how much this vehicle costs?" "Well, I know you're gonna need a tow truck," I said, "and you're going to need to call someone else for a ride because you're not leaving this vehicle here." A deputy arrived a bit later. He took one look at the situation, at the signs everywhere, and at Karen still yelling, and I could see him trying not to smile. He took statements from both of us, and Karen insisted that she owned the land, that I'd set illegal traps, and that I was trying to murder her. I calmly provided my documentation and photos of all the warning signs and the trail camera footage showing her driving past multiple warnings. "Ma'am," the deputy said to Karen, "you're trespassing on private property. The landowner has made multiple attempts to stop you through proper channels, and you ignored all of them. These spiked strips are legal vehicle deterrents on private property with adequate warning. You chose to ignore those warnings." "But this is HOA land." The deputy looked at her like she had grown a second head. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing that you have legal rights to access his property?" Well, she didn't, of course, because it didn't exist. "I'm not gonna arrest you today," the deputy said, "but you're receiving a formal trespassing warning. If you are found on this property again, you will be arrested. Do you understand?" She understood, but she didn't like it. She called a tow truck, called her husband for a ride, and spent the next hour sitting in her car waiting, probably stewing in her own anger. The tow truck driver had a hell of a time getting her Escalade out of my field without causing even more damage. I didn't offer to help though. I thought that would be the end of it, but I was wrong again. 2 weeks later, I got served with a lawsuit. Karen was suing me for property damage to her vehicle, emotional distress, and demanding that I remove all illegal traps from HOA property. She was asking for $25,000 in damages, plus legal fees. I called my lawyer immediately. "Don't worry," she said after reviewing the lawsuit. "This is clearly frivolous. We will file a response and a countersuit for the trespassing damage to your property." The legal process took a long time. Karen's lawyer tried every angle they could think of. They argued that the spike strips were booby traps. They weren't, by the way. Booby traps are hidden and designed to harm people. These were clearly marked vehicle deterrents, and they argued that the warning signs were not adequate. I had photos showing 15 signs along a 100-yard stretch. They tried to claim that there was an implied easement because she had been using the route for months. That's not how easements work, by the way. An illegal use does not create legal rights. My lawyer tore every argument apart. We had documentation for everything. We had the certified letters proving she had been warned, and we had the trail camera footage showing her driving past multiple warning signs. We had the property survey proving ownership, and we had the sheriff's report from the incident. But the best part, during discovery, we found out some interesting things about Karen. She was not just using my property as a shortcut for convenience. The route through my land cut about 5 minutes of her drive to work. 5 minutes! She had been trespassing, ignoring warnings, and damaging my private property just to save 5 minutes on her commute. We also found out that she had been bragging to her HOA friends about how she had found a shortcut and how she was teaching that stubborn farmer a lesson about not cooperating with the community. And she had sent emails about it, texts, she had posted about it on the private HOA Facebook group, and all of that became evidence. Every entitled, self-incriminating word. The deposition was beautiful. My lawyer asked Karen to explain why she thought she had the right to use my property. "It's faster," Karen said, "but it's not your property." "It should be. It's more convenient for the community." "Did you have any legal documentation showing that you had right of way?" "I didn't need documentation. I'm on the HOA board." "And you believe that being on an HOA board gives you the right to use other people's private property?" "It's for the good of the community." My lawyer just let that sit there in the record. Sometimes you don't need to argue when someone is burying themselves. The judge's ruling came down about 7 months after Karen filed her lawsuit, and I will never forget reading it. The judge dismissed every single one of Karen's claims, and then he went further. He awarded me damages for the trespassing, every documented instance calculated by the amount of time she had spent on my property and the damage to the land, and he awarded me legal fees. And then in a paragraph I've read about 50 times just for the satisfaction, he addressed Karen directly in his written opinion. He wrote that her actions showed a willful and persistent disregard for clearly established property rights, that her continued trespassing after multiple warnings demonstrated an entitled attitude inconsistent with the law, and that her lawsuit was frivolous and filled in bad faith with the apparent intent to harass the defendant rather than seek legitimate legal remedy. The total judgment against Karen, just over $31,000. Property damage, legal fees, and punitive damages for the bad faith lawsuit. But wait, it gets even better. Remember how Karen was in the HOA board? Well, the HOA management company was not happy when they found out one of their board members had been making false claims about HOA property and had been trespassing despite being corrected by their own staff, and had then filed a lawsuit that got national attention on social media after someone leaked the court documents, and they asked her to resign. When she refused, the HOA held a special election and she was voted out. Apparently, a lot of her neighbors had not known about her little shortcut or the lawsuit, and they were not thrilled to find out their HOA fees might go up if the association got dragged into her legal problems. Oh, and her insurance? Well, they refused to cover the tire damage because she had willfully ignored multiple warnings and trespassed. So she had to pay for all 4 tires herself, plus the tow truck, plus the judgment against her, and I heard through the grapevine that she and her husband ended up selling their house and moving away about a year later. Whether that was because of the judgment, the embarrassment, or both, I don't know and I don't care. As for me, I used part of the settlement money to install a proper gate system at both ends of my property, where it borders the road, motion-activated cameras and professional signage. The works. I also put in a much better drainage system for that field Karen had been tearing up, so it's actually in better shape now than before all of this started. The spike strips are still there, behind all the warning signs. I haven't had to use them again. It turns out that word spreads fast in a development full of gossipy HOA members, and nobody wants to be the person who ignores 15 warning signs and ends up in court. And yeah, I still farm my land, I still live out here in peace, and I never have to deal with HOA nonsense because I'm not part of one and never will be. Some people believe that wanting something badly enough gives them the right to take it. They will ignore the law, ignore common courtesy, and ignore basic decency, all because they've decided the rules don't apply to them. And sometimes the best way to deal with those people is to let them face the natural consequences of their own choices. Karen chose to trespass, she chose to ignore warnings, she chose to drive past clearly posted signs, and she chose to file a frivolous lawsuit. Every step of the way, she had the option to just stop, to use the public roads like everyone else. To accept that someone else's property was not hers to use, but she didn't, and that's on her. I'm still on my farm, my property is better protected than ever, and I've got a nice chunk of Karen's money sitting in my bank account. She is gone, and I doubt she will be cutting through anyone else's property anytime soon. And the next one is a fantastic, satisfying story that is titled "My contractor coworker quit with 10 seconds notice after what our manager said about contractors." So I worked an engineering contract for a while. They were pretty open-ended, like a lot were, with a vague but not binding length specified, kind of like, this contract is expected to be for 12 months, but it is at the will of the employer and could end earlier or be extended further. But for those that do that kind of work, usually they stick to the vague timelines and a lot of well-performing contractors get extended. Anyway, one day our team of 10, all contractors managed by one full-time employee, let 3 of the contractors go. And they had me do it. Technically, I was running that team, but I was a contractor too and not in charge of any firing like that. So they were told, "This is your last day." At 4 PM, me and another contractor asked our sponsor, "Hey, how come we didn't give those guys any notice?" And he said brightly, "That's why we hire contractors, so we can cut them loose at a moment's notice whenever we want to." We didn't love that answer. Also, it was a weird thing to say to 2 other contractors. He basically told us that we would get no notice and be let go instantly someday. Anyway, long story short, that other contractor was a very sharp guy. He started interviewing and got another job. He told me about it, and I didn't tell anyone else. It started in a few weeks, and he just kept right on working the contract job and was right in the middle of a bunch of work that only he understood. Well, at 5 PM on his last day, he just stood up, grabbed his laptop, mouse docking station, walked to our sponsor's desk and sat them down. He just said brightly, "Hey, thanks for everything. This is my last day." And the guy said, "Wait, are you leaving?" And he just said, "Yeah, thanks," and walked out. And that was it. He also hit send on a more official last day email at the same time too. It was really funny. His work was halfway done, he didn't answer any calls or questions about it, and it took us like a month to figure it all out and get that project back on track. If the sponsor had not been so delighted about being able to fire contractors at any second, that guy would definitely have given a nice 2-week notice and worked to have a smooth handoff of his work. And the next one is a funny story from r/malicious compliance that you don't want to miss. It is brand new and it is titled "Supervisor said, don't just type BRB. So I told the whole team that I had to poop." So this recently happened in my call center type job. My brand new supervisor, promoted for all the wrong reasons, was not exactly qualified. I could write a whole post on that, but the gist is that she only got promoted because she was friends with the boss and is always giving him advice on the women that he dates. Anyway, we had a Teams chat where we kept each other updated and asked for help with things. Normal procedure was simple. If you stepped away, we would typically just type BRB, so everyone knew you were not available for calls. Did this for years with no issues. Well then, a new supervisor decides that's not good enough. She needs to assert control and dominance. She announced to us in one-on-one convos that we all had to start giving specific reasons for why we were stepping away. I told her I was not really comfortable announcing to the entire team every time I had to use the bathroom, and she basically just shrugged and said, "It's the rule. We need transparency so I know what everyone's doing." Okay, well, we've had no issues for years, but whatever she says goes, I guess. The very next time Nature called, instead of a boring BRB, I typed, "BRB, gonna poop in the bathroom." Immediately she PM'd me in Teams saying, "That was not professional." I reminded her that she told us to be specific, and I was just following directions. After that, others started joining in. Some favorites were BRB, gonna stand in front of the urinal and do an impression of a water fountain. BRB, gonna blow my nose to try to dislodge this giant booger. Within a week, the supervisor started telling us that we didn't need to be so specific when stepping away from our desks. Like, yeah, we know. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. BRB, my cat baby just projectile vomited all over me. See you again tomorrow.